And it wasn't very long before 2 minutes wasn't long enough. You couldn't physically in your mind bring up their name and a memory of each because there were so many of them. I was an infantry soldier in the Princess Patricia's Canadian Infantry. My name is Paul Trapper Kane.
My name is Earl Eastman. I did 33 years in the military in the REME Corps, which stands for Royal Canadian Electrical Mechanical Engineers.
I come from a family of soldiers, and here we are approaching Remembrance Day. When I was a young fella at Remembrance Day, watching my ancestors stand around the cenotaph, they wouldn't tell us what happened during the war, but I always wanted to know what they were thinking during the 2 minutes of silence. So the only way to find that out was to join the military. So when I joined the military, I went PPCLI, I became a member of the Airborne Regiment of Canada. I was crippled for life in the line of duty, and I think I came away with a pretty good understanding of what I experienced, just touching on what they experienced. So military tradition in our family was a big thing, and it was a natural for me to follow it.
Out of that 33 years, I spent 20 years within the combat arms side of the house. So I got the opportunity to go on several tours and doing my job. My grandfather, he definitely was a motivator for me. You know, for understanding, he never opened up about his wartime service until after I started wearing the uniform. And after I got into the uniform in the military, then he started opening up more and more and more. He had PTSD, big time. You'd never know it unless you were living with him. I seen him sit for hours and talk to himself. When he joined, he also convinced his cousin to join. And his cousin was killed over there. And that really affected him very, very much. He was one of the originals of the St. Stephen Legion when they first opened up, and was real supportive right till the end, you know, of the Legion on that, because he understood that the Legion itself is a place was designed actually to be peer support for all those veterans coming back home.
The Legion has always existed since 1925 in the communities around us, but for us in the regular Army in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, when I served in particular, the Legion doors weren't as open as wide as they are now. The World War II fellows, unique human experience, they were looked down upon by the First World War veterans. They'd been through the Great War. Not so much as looked down as far as I think there was a feeling in the First World War veterans that they didn't get the job done, that the Great War to end all wars didn't. So their sons and daughters literally had to put on the uniform 20 years later and go fight the same enemy again. And then when the Korean generation came back from the fighting in Korea, it wasn't even classed as a war in the minds of many veterans. It was more of a police action, where it was full-on combat. So the peacekeeping generation came along in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, and there was, again, a disconnect between their service and people who'd gone before. So we had to not reinvent the Legion, but we had to get in the doors, and we had to reawaken their idea that a veteran is a veteran is a veteran. As Earl says, Legion's a great place to heal and gather those who've served and sacrificed everything. 40,000 comrades came back from the fighting in Afghanistan, like Brother Earl here. So there's a lot of need in our community for healing and for getting these folks back into the community, and the Legion does that in spades. The Canadian military is an amazing machine. It trains you to do your job, and it's when you get out that you have to find out that you have to step up yourself and take your own healing path into your hands. You can't trust that the system's going to do that for you.
One of the things is that people don't understand around here. It's easy to pull a trigger, and it's easy to take a life. The hardest thing is living with your conscience. You got to understand that soldiers have a defensive shield, and it's like your training. You actually enable that to isolate yourself, you know, from anything that kind of tries to trigger bad memories, we'll say. I had a bad time in Afghanistan when Nicola Goddard got killed. We're standing there at a CanCon, what they call a Canadian contingent show, and in the middle of that she got killed. A big one for me in Afghanistan for that. Of course, then I'm in Bosnia in the Yugoslavian war, and every day the joke was coming home, once you get back to your own base, how many bullet holes do you have in the car or in the truck? Because people were shooting at you the whole time, and you might not even know it.
You know, you can bend a lot of laws, but not the law of gravity. But as it happens, one day I stepped out of the aircraft and an unconscious paratrooper wrapped with my lines. I had to cut away. I got cut free at 180 feet. So I fell 18 stories without any parachute. By the time I deployed my reserve, it takes 240 feet for one of those things to open. So at 180 feet, when I cut away, I was able to get it out, and it slowed me down enough to save my life, but I struck the ground. It was November the 6th, the ground was frozen rock hard. I shattered the talus, is the large bone in your feet, shattered both of them, 40 fractures. My right tib platform, drove my femur into my bowel, compression of the fifth lumbar, burst fracture of the fifth and fourth. I had paralysis. I was 2 years in hospital, 19 surgeries. Had to learn how to walk again. There's a dozen things every night that wake me up. But like Earl says, the training, from basic training to trades training to deployment, it's progressive. It's the years afterwards that it all starts to come back. Then there's no real steps to make you fit back into society. There's no progressive training to make you leave that behind. There's no individual cause for you to even concern yourself with that, because your job is to do your job. It's when you get out that places like the Legion or veterans organizations, ad hoc organizations like the Canadian Army Veterans Motorcycle Units, that's what saves lives. Because we're paid to take lives, but it's when we come home that we have to fit back in and survive.
And that's why when Trapper mentioned about the Canadian Army Veterans Motorcycle Unit that he co-founded with another individual, that we found that lack that we could plug into this thing and go out, and we found that you know, just going to a Tim Hortons, you know, guys know we wear ribbons on our vest and stuff like that, and all of a sudden you'll have another veteran show up and say, hey man, you know, what's going on? Feeling comfortable to talk to us in the parking lot.
Along the side of folks like Earl and hundreds of others across the country, we attended every single repatriation of our dead from Afghanistan. They saw us being at the airport. They saw us not wanting to be seen, but just there to support them. So we would support the families during the funerals. We would support them in fundraisers afterwards. And I think that a veteran's role, if they should choose to accept that role, is to prepare the way for those who follow. And unfortunately, in Iraq and Iran and everything that's been going on in Poland and Latvia and Yugoslavia, Ukraine, all the different things we've had people go and experience, it's not going to get any better. And there's more to come. So because of the Royal Canadian Legion, grassroots organizations like the CAV, there is a network of support to help folks who come back. And we'll never give it up. But on Remembrance Day, that 2 minutes, you just become overcome with so many memories, so many names, and it's hard, but it's survivable because we're surrounded by our community, we're surrounded by folks like yourselves, we're surrounded by people who care. Because if people stop caring, this country's in bad shape. Our world is in bad shape.
Throughout all my tours that I've done, I've lost friends. And I think about my friends. I think about what my grandfather went through at the time. So it's a deep reflection day, and we try to make sure, like the Trapper just mentioned, we try to make sure that we're supportive of everybody else's their issues as well, you know, on their Remembrance Day as well.
I used to do a little thing when I was a kid in training. The people that I lost in training, people that we loved, people that are better in my mind, people than I was, who didn't come home. In that 2 minutes of silence, I would devote that 2 minutes, and then I would try to remember a little bit about each of them. And it wasn't very long into 4 or 5 years of military service before 2 minutes wasn't long enough. You couldn't physically in your mind bring up their name and a memory of each because there were so many of them. I take a little bit of every single day, and I'll partition off a part of that day to remember somebody and properly say their name aloud in my head and memories about them. But on Remembrance Day, that 2 minutes, you just become overcome. Remembrance Day is crucial, but every single day all year long for us is Remembrance Day.